Sad dog stared out the window every day until his owner wrote the neighbor an unbelievable note. Doing it for her dog. She hesitated, not knowing if what she was doing was the right thing to do or whether it would even work. She loved her dog and would do anything to make him happy. But this might be taking things a bit too far. After giving it much thought, she pushed the doubts aside. If she didn't do this now, her dog might never be the same. So she had to take her chances and hope for a miracle. A newfound interest out the window. Casey never thought she'd end up doing something like this for her dog, but what happened during those first few weeks was a once-in-a-lifetime experience that changed her perspective on animals forever. And it all started when she began noticing a strange behavior in her dog. Every day, 3 times a day, he would hop on the railing and stare out the window. Casey had no idea what he was looking at, but she was determined to find out. Bursting with curiosity. Casey was pretty busy with work and life, so it was not easy to sit and try to play detective in order to decipher her dog's actions. But staring out the window seemed to have become part of his daily routine, and she really wanted to know why. At first, she thought it might be squirrels, but she hadn't seen those critters in her vicinity for a very long time. So on her day off, she decided to finally solve the mystery. The object of his attention. Casey was at home watching television when her dog ran up to the window to stare outside again. This time she followed and looked outside to figure out what was the object of his attention. And then she saw it. Straight across was her neighbor's house, and on the windowsill was a cat. Could this be what her dog had been obsessing over? It certainly seemed like it, though it made Casey scratch her head in confusion. Don't cats and dogs hate each other? A complicated relationship. Most of us grow up thinking cats and dogs are natural enemies, but that's a misconception. The truth is, dogs were bred to hunt small furry animals, so when they see a cat run away from them, their instinct will be to chase it. Dogs and cats can get along though, as demonstrated by countless families who raise them together. Still, Casey's dog had never met this cat face to face. Was the attention even reciprocated? The new normal. Now that she knew what was the object of her dog's obsession, Casey continued to observe his behavior to see what the cat would do in return. She noticed that most of the time, the cat would also stare right back at her dog. So it was a sort of long-distance relationship. Casey was amused and thought it was kind of charming. Eventually, she got used to this weird occurrence, until about 6 months later, when it suddenly stopped. A 180 change. Every day, Casey would walk downstairs to find her dog staring at his cat friend in the window. Then one day, she found him lying on the floor instead. She thought it was weird, but continued with her morning routine. But when she put food in her dog's bowl, he stayed put and didn't go eat. That's when Casey began worrying. Could her dog be sick? She decided not to take chances, and so she drove him to the vet. Medical mystery? The vet examined Casey's dog and asked her questions about his diet, activities, and sleeping habits. After all was done, he determined that the dog was in great health. Casey was befuddled. If he wasn't sick, what could be the cause for his change in behavior? She even told the vet about his daily routine and how he'd suddenly stopped. The doctor brushed it off as unrelated, but Casey wasn't so sure. The culprit. When they got home, the dog rushed back to the window and, a second later, jumped back down and returned to his spot on the floor, looking glum. Taken aback, Casey walked over to the window to see what had disappointed him so much. Then she understood. On the neighbor's windowsill now sat a row of potted plants, blocking the view and preventing him from seeing his feline friend. Casey knew she had to find a way to cheer him up. Nothing worked. During the following days, Casey did everything in her power to help her dog forget all about the cat on the windowsill. She played with him as much as she could, took him for long walks, and bought him new toys and yummy treats. But nothing seemed to capture his attention or change his demeanor. He was well and truly depressed. In her desperation, Casey decided to do something a little crazy. A wacky idea. Casey's dog meant everything to her, and she couldn't bear the sight of him all glooming and dispirited. So she decided to reach out to her neighbor and ask for their help. She knew it might make her seem a little crazy, but she'd never forgive herself if she didn't try. She grabbed a Sharpie and a piece of paper and wrote something she never imagined herself doing. In her note, Casey explained to the neighbor how her dog had been looking out at the cat in the window for half a year and how the plants had changed everything. Now that you have potted plants there, he's heartbroken, but he keeps looking for your cat every time. She asked if maybe they could move the potted plants to another window. Then she taped the note on her neighbor's window and waited. Would they think she was insane? Accepting the consequences. Casey walked back home wondering how she'd gotten to this point and whether she'd become too invested in this strange dog and cat relationship. She had no idea if the neighbor would respond or how, but her dog's happiness meant the world to her. So if she came to be known as the crazy neighbor with the love-struck dog, then so be it. The next day, she looked out the window and couldn't believe what she saw. It only took a day for the neighbor to respond, and luckily for Casey's dog, it was a positive response. The potted plants were gone from the window. What's more, they'd also taped a note to it. It simply read, "For true love." Clearly, the neighbor was also a believer in pet happiness. Delighted, Casey waited to see if her dog would go back to his old routine. A happy ending. Not long afterward, Casey found her dog staring out the window again like he used to. He went back to his cheerful self now that he could see his feline friend again. The cat also returned to the window, and so their curious relationship continued, proving there's no inherent animosity between cats and dogs.